Welcome to our Lunch and Learn series on tools. I am Kathleen Thompson, and I'm with Steve Mahoney. This is the third of 4. Today's session is about designing visuals to enhance your story. And you can see that we've already done 2 Excel sessions, and we have another one about Canva that's coming up. So before we even start designing visuals, the most important thing to do is to ask the question, what's it for? Because not all presentations are alike, and so the visuals won't be the same either. So what type of presentation are you making? And we already asked you in the poll, so you already have a hint as to what they're going to be. The first one is a speech. A speech might be motivational, it might be aspirational, you might be trying to convince people to change their minds about something. And I'm going to assume, for purposes of this workshop, that your speech is live and you're using visuals to support it. A second option is a presentation. For example, if you're looking for investors, or you're describing a project to your team, or you're trying to get approval for something, this could be live or it might be online. The third is a proposal. It's a formal proposal of work to a prospective client. That's the most likely use for a small business person. And again, it might be live or it might be online. And then we have teaching. This is when you're explaining something to a group. Again, could be live, could be online. And lastly, a demonstration, where you're showing one or more people how to do something. So the different types of presentations are going to have different types of visuals. Now, some principles of visual design. You want to match the visuals to the purpose. The visuals should always enhance the presenter. You want them to be simple and consistent so that it's not jarring to people. You want them to be on brand. And you want to draw the audience's eye toward where you want them to focus. And so those are key principles of designing any kind of visual, whether you're showing it online or whether it's in print. Now, visuals are not meant to be a tool to store your notes or talking points. And what I mean is, do not show them on the screen. If you need help with talking points, you need to have them somewhere else. It's one of the biggest things that people do that's incorrect with their visuals, is use the actual thing they're displaying as a cheat sheet for themselves. What they are is a tool to help the audience understand and remember what you say. Now, how much do visuals matter to the overall effectiveness of your presentation? It depends on the type of presentation. So you can see here, I've created a chart that I call a focus chart, which is where is the audience focused depending on what type of presentation is being made. And you can see that the speech, and these are estimates and they're averages, so they're not going to apply in every case. But you can see on the top line where I have speech, most of the focus should be on the presenter, if not all. Whereas a demonstration, almost all of it is on the visuals, because you're actually showing people how to do something. The ones in between vary, and these are, like I said, they're averages. So they're not necessarily going to be exactly what you're going to shoot for. But when you're making a presentation, you want the focus to be a little more on yourself, and it might be even more than that. A proposal is the other way, where the visuals count a lot. Teaching kind of could go all over the place depending on what it is you're teaching. So I just made an estimate. And demonstration is clearly the most visual heavy. So remember, you want to fit your visuals to purpose and have them enhance what you're saying. And so you want to pay attention to these averages and then vary the content of your visuals as well. So it's not just the amount of the visuals, but the content within them that matters. And we'll see that in the slides as we go forward. So the first principle was keep things as simple as possible. So what you want to do is make your visuals as simple as you can while still conveying what's important. And that's going to vary depending on the purpose of the visuals in the first place, as you saw in the last slide. Now, simple is harder to do than complicated because it takes a lot of effort and thought. It's easy to just kind of throw everything up on the slide. It's harder to pare things down. But when you do that, it makes the audience have to work a lot harder to pay attention. They don't even know where to look a lot of times. And so you run the risk of confusing them if you make things too complex. The questions they're going to be asking if you have too much on the slide is, are they supposed to look at the slides or are they supposed to look at you? Are they supposed to pay attention to what you're saying, or are they supposed to be paying attention to the screen, especially if you're reading what's on the screen? That is one of the biggest no-nos because they can read faster than you can talk. And so they've already read it all and now they're already bored. Another way to keep this simple is to draft your presentation before you make the visuals. So you decide on what type of presentation is it going to be, what is the goal, what is the arc of the presentation, almost as if you're writing a movie or a story, and what is the timing going to be. And then you draw an outline of your presentation, and then you start on the visuals. Many times people craft their presentations starting with the visuals, and it's not a good idea. Doing it this way helps to keep it simple because there may be times when you need no visuals whatsoever. You also want your visuals to match your brand, as I said earlier. That includes the colors, that includes the fonts, that includes your logo, the feel that it has, and even the language. You want all of them to be completely on point with your brand that you've already established. And in fact, it's helpful to create a brand template and then use it. This is SCORE's brand template. You can see over on the left side of the screen are the fonts. It even has the exact font that the logo uses. It says Gotham Bold, which has been skewed slightly. Didn't tell me exactly how much, but skewed somewhat. And then it shows that the typefaces that are available for us to use in other applications. And then you can see the colors off to the right, and you can see all the options of how to depict the colors from RGB to hex, etc. It's helpful to have these. We use these all the time. And this, if you do this for yourself, having a template will help people to recognize you instantly. And it even helps to have a PowerPoint template that you create for yourselves, because we did that with our PowerPoint cover. And all our Lunch and Learn series have the same cover design, which I'm going to show you on the next slide in case you forgot what it looked like. So here it is. I'm going to flip back so you can see the blues and the greens, etc. And we used those to design our cover slide, including the fonts. So that is a perfect example of how to stay on brand. Create a template first. All right, now we get to focus. Helping the audience focus is one of the key things you want to do with your visuals. What is the main point? How do you want to direct their focus? Here's an example of some data that I'm showing. Now, when I just show this, the audience doesn't know exactly where I want them to focus. So they're going to start reading everything and not really listening. So let's say I want the focus to be on the improvement in gross profit percent because it went from 15 to 24%. I can do this. Immediately, the other things don't matter as much. If I showed that first off, you would know to look in the bottom right corner and go, oh, 24% must mean something important. And then in my presentation, I would be talking about how it went from 15 to 24% in 1 month. Another way to do the same thing is on this next slide, where I even went one step further and I chose to gray out all the other data so it's lighter, including the 15% gross profit margin. It's brighter than the lines above it, but it's not as bright as the 24%, and I still have my arrow. So anytime you have a main point that you want to make and you still need to show the other numbers, this is a really effective way to design your visual. Now, if you didn't need to see all the other numbers, you could just put a slide up that says 24% in big numbers and then explain the rest. So this is where your discretion is going to come in to say, okay, do I need all the numbers for context, or can I explain the numbers and not worry about it? So let's get into the individual types of presentations. Now that we've talked through some sort of principles about how to focus and how to keep things simple. If you are making a speech, you want the slides to be as simple as possible and perhaps not even have any. Many people give speeches with no slides. It's safer, number one, because you don't have to worry. If you're giving a speech, you're often going somewhere else, and then you have to rely on their technology and their tech people, and it doesn't always work. So it can be helpful to have no slides whatsoever. But if you want slides to enhance your speech, you want to keep them as simple as possible because you want the focus primarily on you. So in this case, anyone looking at your slides, your visuals, should be able at a glance to see what's on the slide, glance at it quickly, and then return their focus back to you. Because remember, it's only there to enhance what you're saying. If there is a time during your speech where there is nothing to show, put a blank slide in like this. Rather than show the one from before and just let it sit there forever, if it no longer applies to what you're talking about, simply put a blank one in. And it's better to put black in than white for some reason, because people recognize it as the absence of something rather than thinking, oh, it's white and it's blinding. And if you are going to show images, you want them to enhance or complement what you're saying. They don't have to literally depict what you're saying. And you can move them around the page. They don't always have to take up the entire screen. They don't always have to be centered. You could have them on the left-hand side, the right-hand side, the upper, the lower. You can move them around if you want to, or they could take up the entire screen. It's up to you. Now, in SCORE, when we're showing a PowerPoint, we always have to show the bottom banner. Otherwise, I wouldn't have. I would have just shown you a black slide with the picture. And you may not have those restrictions. So if you don't have to show that. And I wouldn't, because it does take away from the image itself. And what you want to do when you're deciding where to place your image is look at the image itself and say, where do I want the audience to focus? In this case, I wanted you to focus on the horns clashing, because I wanted you to understand that rather than butting heads, your slide should complement you. If the focus of the image is to the left or the right, or it's someone, say, facing outward, then what you want to do is put them so that the outward direction is where you have more space to the other side. So in other words, if the image is on the left and they're facing to the right, gazing off into the distance, I would put that image even more to the left and show, so it gives the expanse toward the right, looking out to the distance. So again, totally up to you as to where you put them. They don't have to be the same. All right, now we get to a presentation. Again, this might be when you're looking for investors or you're describing a project to a team. I'm on the board of an arts group, and we made a presentation to a corporation looking for a grant, and this is exactly what we did. Now, usually in this case, you're going to be presenting it live, either in person or online. And so you're going to be showing a presentation on the screen while you're talking, and then you might send a copy later. So a presentation is going to be similar to a speech, except you are going to have some text on here. Some cases, more text than you might otherwise have. But you still want to keep your text as simple as possible, because you can put your details in the notes section below. And I'm going to just escape out of here for a minute and show you my notes section. So that's where you can put any of your talking points, and no one is the wiser because no one is seeing it. They're just simply seeing what's on your screen. And if you want to give this as a handout later, you can save it as a PDF as notes pages. It'll put your slide at the top and all your notes at the bottom. So you want to make sure they're depicted nicely for someone else to read and not just your jargon that you used to use as random notes. But it's an excellent way to give people the PowerPoint later and not have them see all that stuff. Now, when you're making a presentation, I generally suggest that you start with a summary for busy people and then detail it out a little bit more later. And if you have to show bullet points or you have to show data, try to break it into chunks and use animations to show only what is presently being discussed at the time. And don't read the bullet points. Keep the bullet points on the screen short and make the notes detailed. And I'll show you what I mean by that. This is what I showed you earlier when I showed you the 5 types of presentations. And you'll see that what I did was, as I got to each one, I grayed out the ones before. So your eye immediately focuses on the one I'm talking about. And again, if I demo this, my notes, drag it. My notes were down below. For some reason, there we go. There's my notes. So I didn't show you all that. I simply had one word on the slide at a time. And I would use that as much as you possibly can whenever you have to use text. If you need to show data, you can show what I showed you before with that chart with the numbers and focus people's attention on only what you want them to see. All right, proposal. This was the one that most of you said you use. This is where you're documenting work that you're proposing to do for a prospective customer. Now, in this case, you may send your proposal in advance, or you might not. If you send it in advance, you can do it the same way as with the presentation that I just described. You can put some stuff on slides. You can have the detail in the notes. You can send it as a PDF to them as notes pages, and then they can see everything. If you're presenting your proposal live, you might put the more important information directly on the screen because you're going to be discussing it as you go. So that's where the difference comes in. And you can use animations to control what you show when. And I'll give you a very simple example on the next slide. Say you're showing packages that you offer, that you do branding for people, and I just made all this up. So your package shows that you've got bronze, silver, and gold, and it shows what's in each package. So you're showing that on the screen, and then you're describing what's in each of these features. No pricing is showing yet, so you are completely controlling what the user can see. Now, if you wanted to control it even further, you could set this up so that each one of these lines would show up one at a time. I didn't because I wanted to show you more quickly. But if you wanted to talk about one and then the other and then the next and the next and the next, you could. Or you can show all 5 together. But Keep in mind, no price has happened yet. So then what you do is you talk with your customer or your prospective customer about these different options and steer them in a particular direction based on what you hear them say as to which one seems to fit them the best. No prices yet. And now the prices show up only when you show them. Rather than showing them the prices up front, and they immediately gravitate toward the cheapest one because that's what most people do. So this way they're predisposed toward, ooh, I like this one. And the other thing you can do as before you show the numbers is you can say, now some people might think that the silver package was $5,000 or $6,000 if they're gravitating toward the silver package, for example. But in my case, my gold package isn't even that expensive. My gold package is $4,500 and the silver package is only $2,500. So you've had the conversation, you've shown them what you wanted to show them, you have framed dollars so that their mind is already thinking of value before you show the numbers, and then you show the numbers. Teaching. This one is much more complicated because this totally depends on what you're teaching. It depends on whether you're live or whether you're online, and it also depends on your audience size. So I'm assuming this is not a demonstration type of teaching when I'm talking about teaching here. So let's say it's live and it's a small group. In some cases, you might want to just write on a board or a flip chart or something like that. You might not even want to design any visuals at all. Now, let's say that it's online or it's a large group, even if it's live. If it's live and it's a large group, now you've got distance you have to worry about. So now you've got to show stuff on a screen because otherwise people won't be able to see it. So let's say you're going to do live showing people makeup tips or exercises or yoga, or you're going to show a video or something like that. This is where you want to actually just use your camera, not have pre-canned visuals, but actually use your camera, have a video camera set on you, and you just do your thing. So you also may have slides, in which case you want to make it as much like either the presentation or the proposal as possible. If you're teaching like that, I would make it like the presentation. Have as few words as possible, show a lot of images to enhance what you're saying so people focus more on you. But if you're showing the results of a math problem or a logic problem, then obviously you got to show more of that on the screen. And then you're going to use the focus principle to keep their eyes focused on the right thing at the right time. So you might want to break that logic problem or math problem down into chunks and show only pieces of it until you get to the end. So remember when you're teaching, because the spectrum is all over the map, you want to always think about what's going to help the audience learn the best. That's the best advice I can give you. What's going to enhance what you're teaching to help the audience learn the best? Is it me doing something? Is it me showing something? Is it writing? What is it? Because even if you're doing Zoom, there's a whiteboard feature that you could use to do something live, which may be better than showing visuals in advance. All right, demonstration. This is where you're showing the audience how to actually do something. So the first one would be if it's a real-time demonstration. In that case, what you want to do is what I did here. Have templates prepared and show how you did it. This saves a lot of time and it helps them see the results first. If you attended Steve's Excel workshops in the first two that we just had last week, you saw him do that exactly. He showed the work to build the certain things, but he also had some work done in advance so that he didn't have to start from a completely blank screen. You also want to create scenarios similar to people's real life and prepare them in advance as much as possible. Also, when you're doing a demonstration with an external system, like another computer system, another version of software or something like that, you want to have a backup presentation with screenshots of key system functions in case the system is down. I cannot tell you how many times that happened to me because we were in development mode on our applications and we were having to give training before it was put in production, and the test system would be down even though we told them we needed it up in time for the training. And so you don't want to take any chances at all. If time is of the essence and people need to see what they need to see and you can't reschedule, you want to make sure you always have backup screenshots of anything that you did in the system that's important that you can speak to in case the system's down. Now, another thing that is great is while you're doing a demonstration, if you're going between, say, PowerPoint or Keynote and the system itself, you can always embed a hyperlink to the thing you're going to demo directly on your slides. And that way you can make a smooth transition to those slides, to the other system. Now that's assuming it's live. Live is more challenging because of the things that might come up when you're trying to demonstrate. If you're doing a recorded demonstration, it's a little bit different because now you have the benefit of making sure the system is up and running when you're creating the demonstration. And it's similar to doing it in real time, except oftentimes what you're doing there is you're recording a voiceover on top of slides or whatever it is, the system that you're demonstrating. So you're going to use like a screen share system to record what the motions that you're doing on the computer at the time that you're recording. It's basically screen capture software. And you can add slides to the front and the end if you want to kind of package it all together. So the next slides are going to demonstrate some other capabilities you can use to enhance your presentations. And these are going to be demos. So I am going to show you the slide and then hit exit, escape to get out of here so you can see this in real time. So the first one is the insert menu. And this is PowerPoint. Keynote is similar, but not exactly the same. You can insert text boxes. You can insert pictures. You can insert shapes. You can insert smart art. And you can insert tables or charts. Tables over here. Smart art is really cool. I'm going to just show you some samples. I use this a lot. And you can see that there are categories for smart art, and then you just pick it, and you can see if I pick this, and then it just lets you type in there, and then you can design from there. Tables, that's what I used in this one. That was a table, I inserted it. Pictures, you can insert from anywhere, and those are really cool. This is a picture I got online. Now, one of the things I want to show you is how I got this to look like this. Because before it was like this, when I inserted the picture, it was really, really bright. And I wanted my text to stand out. So I go to Design. Got to move people. Format Background. And this shows up. And I've got my picture. So see how it says picture. And you see this tool that says transparency. Originally, it looked like this, and you couldn't read the text. So all I did was drag the thing the little crossbar, or you can use this, arrows, until it's faint enough so the focus is really on the text and the image just simply enhances the text. I use this all the time. So and that's assuming I want a picture as background, which you would do by going format background, choosing picture, finding a picture, and then deciding on the transparency. And here's where I did my hyperlink that I described earlier. I just typed, in this case, hyperlink, but I might want to say system here. And when I edit it, if I right click, it says edit link. I simply copy and paste the link to where I wanted it to go, which was somewhere outside. Notice that another choice is place in this document. So if you're making a presentation and you want to flip back and forth between, say, a slide that shows an image of 5 things, and you want to show the first thing and then the second thing and then the third thing, but every time you want to go back to where you were, you can do place in this document, and you'll see that it's got the slides listed. So that if slide 2 is the one with my really cool graphic that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I always want to go back there, then on slide 9, I could have a hyperlink that takes me back to slide 2. And then I go to slide 10, and then I have a hyperlink that takes me back to slide 2. So it keeps bringing me back to the one I want. So it can guide you back and forth in a presentation, so you don't have to scroll or do some weird thing where you try to find the page you were looking for, because that can be really challenging. All right, so I'm going to cancel out of this and go to my next slide. This is, I'm going to go back to slideshow so you can see it large first. This looks like a chart, and you're like, this is great, except it's even more powerful than that, because again, if I exit and I cancel out of this thing so you can see better. All right, if I double click, you will see that this is actually an Excel spreadsheet. So I embedded an Excel spreadsheet inside this slide, which means that while I'm doing a demonstration or a presentation or whatever, and if I want to show what's happening next in month 4, now I can simply type month 4, and now I can start typing numbers, which that's really terrible. And then I can type numbers in here too. And then I can put my formula in by copying, etc. So I can, on the fly, edit this Excel spreadsheet and then just click out of it. And now it shows 4 months worth of data. So when you do insert, it's one of the choices under table. Table, Excel spreadsheet. This is an excellent tool. It's not the most beautiful thing because it's a spreadsheet, unless you formatted this to look gorgeous, which I didn't. But if you pre-formatted this to look beautiful, it's going to look nicer than that. So that's an excellent tool. And you can edit the numbers in real time. All right, back to slideshow. And go to the next one. This is another great tool. Again, I know you can do this in PowerPoint. I'm not certain if you can do it in Keynote, but I suspect you can. This is if you have slides that you've made somewhere else that you want to drag into this presentation and then either use them as is or edit them, you can reuse your slides. And you can see from the home screen, you go to new slide. There's 3 choices. You pick reuse slides. And then in the dialog box, I'll show you that by escaping out, and I'm going to do it in real time. So assuming I want it to be right after this, I go to home. new slide, reuse slides, and the dialog box shows up for where do I want to get my slides from. Now you can see that if I use the down arrow, it's not telling me any. I have to do this, which is really annoying because I can't read it all. I prefer to use browse every time because it's a lot easier. And now I can see all my choices of where I get pictures from or slides from or presentations or whatever. And so once I pick one, and I'm going to just use this because I already did. Now you can see they're on the right-hand side. And if I like this one, now I've got choices. If I want to keep the branding I have on my existing slide, I do not check this box. Because if I check this box, it's going to keep this exactly the way it was in the original slide. And you can see the colors don't match at all. They look terrible compared to this. So if I put that in the middle of this, it's going to look really strange. So I'm going to not keep the source formatting. Simply click on the slide and you'll see that it dragged it in. It also looks really strange. It's got some weird line here and it's got this thing here, which I have no idea what that is. So I'm going to edit it and I'm going to get rid of it and whatever. Now, if you decide, oh, that's not the one I wanted, I didn't mean to click it, I clicked too fast, you can just undo, which you hopefully know how to do undo with your undo button or Control Z, and it just gets rid of the slide in the first place. If you like the formatting the slide had, you can keep it. Now, another thing, I'm going to go back to this slide right here and show you the animations pane and expand it so you can see how I created this, where I showed you speech and then it grayed out, and then I showed you presentation and then it grayed out, and then I showed you proposal and it grayed out. You can see that if I go to animations, that I can add an animation and it shows me the choices. So I have one highlighted. Let's pick one that doesn't have anything highlighted. Let's go to this slide and let's create an animation here. So I highlight this and go add animation and I get choices. And again, my principle is keep it simple. Don't make it all these weird fancy things. Just either fade or appear or something where don't complicate matters. So you can see it's put a 1 here. And now it's going to ask me, well, what do you want to do with that? I can either start by clicking or it's going to automatically load as soon as this slide gets advanced to. If I've got 3 or 4 choices, I might want the first one to show on the screen right away, but I might not because I might want to talk first and then have my first thing show. So it's up to me whether I want to start on click or start after previous. And then when I click effect options, it then says, what do I want to do when it's done? Do I want to dim it? In which case I switch to a color. Oops. Pick a color, and I don't like those colors, so I generally pick a gray color that's darker or lighter. If I have a light background, I lighten it up. So I say, when I'm done, I want it to be light gray. You also can decide how you want to animate the text all at once, go by the word, go by the letter. You have a whole bunch of choices as to what you want to do. So I'm going to click OK. And you'll see that it's showing me, if I do play, it's showing me that it's black to gray. All right. Back to my slideshow. And move forward to here. So don't forget, you want your visuals to enhance what you're saying, not compete. You want them to be fit for the purpose. You want them to be as simple as possible while still conveying what's important for people to see. You want them to be on brand, and you want to direct your audience's focus to where you want them to look. So what's next? After this workshop, you're going to get an email with a link to the replay. And also there'll be a link to this presentation so that you can see it and play with it and practice some of the things that are included in this presentation. And you can borrow any of the techniques that you want. You can come to the next workshop on Canva, where I'll show you how to actually design the images that you can use in these presentations, as well as social media posts or email headers and the like. You can practice designing for your purpose that you chose in the poll, and you can show them to other people. And there's a great book that I use as a resource that can explain these concepts in a lot more detail, and it's called Slideology. I know it's kind of a weird word. She made it up. Slideology by Nancy Duarte, and that's Duarte. Another thing you can do is you can get a mentor if you don't have one. They may not necessarily help you with designing visuals for presentations, but they can certainly help you with a lot of other things. So Steve's going to put up a poll to ask you if you have a mentor right now, and if you don't, if you would like one. And if you would like to work with a mentor, then we will contact you to let you know how you can do that. And then we're going to have time for Q&A. And so we are going to go through what's in the Q&A box, and there's still time to post there if you haven't already. And again, if you want to talk in more detail, you can ask to speak after you list your question. You can say, can I please talk about this in more detail? And again, if you have a more confidential question, just let us know and we will save it for after the recording. All right, Steve, we'll end the poll and we'll open it up for Q&A.
All right, great. Thanks, Kathleen. That was wonderful. Some really great tips. And I've been using PowerPoint for so long that I learned a number of things today that I didn't know before. And it's, you highlight a lot of the challenges in tailoring your presentation or your document to your audience or what you're using for it. I was flashing back to times a long time ago where I was preparing a presentation for somebody, and I made two big mistakes. The first was I had way too many words on the screen, on the page. And the second was I was cobbling together pictures and words. And he stepped back and said, we don't have a story. Let's storyboard this first. Let's decide what we're trying to tell. Do the storyboard first, then do the slides. And the thing I always remembered about it was the second thing was he said, when you're giving a presentation, the slides are like wallpaper. You just want to have something up in the background, but you don't put all your talking points. Like you said, you don't put too many words because people are just going to start reading it and they're not going to listen to you.
Right.
So great advice. We don't have any questions in the Q&A box yet, but I do have one that I wanted to ask. So if folks have questions, please, put your question in the Q&A box and we can answer it today. Kathleen, one of the things I was thinking about, especially as it relates to the people who said in the poll that a presentation or a proposal is a big part of what they use this for. Do you have any advice for people who have kind of a presentation in mind and they think it's going to be 30 minutes and then I've got time for Q&A afterwards, and then they find out when they get there that their client's running late and they have less time, and now they got to kind of think through what they do with their presentation? Any advice on how you would handle that on the fly?
I wouldn't handle that on the fly. I would always be, if you're participating in an event where it's back-to-back presentations, I would always prepare if I have to cut a little bit out or even a lot out, and know your 5-minute, let's say it's supposed to be 20 minutes. I would have a 15-minute version and I would have a 5-minute version, because there's bound to be certain things in there that are the most critical to get across. And the same thing is true if you're presenting to a prospective client, for example, and they're running late and you're sitting in the office waiting and you have an hour and suddenly it's 45 minutes. Always be prepared as to what you would say if you have less time, so you don't have to think on the fly. Most people aren't experienced enough to be able to prepare that all at once. unless you have a lot of experience, I would recommend doing that preparation instead.
It's great advice. It's just like the elevator pitch, right? It's do you need the
Mhm.
30-second elevator pitch, the 5-minute, or the 15-minute, right? What are the different
Yeah.
points you wanna present?
Yeah.
Uh,
And it happens a lot when it's back to back, when it's
right.
a meeting, a conference, whatever, and it's one after the other after the other. And the other thing is, it always takes longer than you think it will when you get live. You think you'll talk faster because you have adrenaline, but what tends to happen is you add more stuff. So I would make sure that when you're timing, when you practice, and I'm hoping you're all practicing because practice is really important. I would, when you're practicing, time it, make it to be at least 5 minutes shorter than the time you have allotted, because you will probably suck it up by either pausing or adding stuff at the last minute.
Right. Right. And it's okay to end a little early, right? There's nothing wrong with ending a little early. And the other thing I was thinking of is you may be in a position where you go into a mindset where you say, I'm going to have a presentation. I've got 45 minutes of presentation, and then I'm going to do questions and answers at, the last 15 minutes. You may be 5 to 10 minutes in, and there are a number of questions coming in, and it could start a dialogue. It'd be
Mhm.
kind of rude for you to say to people, well, we're not going to take questions now. We're going to leave to the end. So you have to be prepared for that as well, to know that, and someone may be asking you a question that's you're covering 5 slides from now, and it may be okay to talk about it now. Or you could say, hey, I'm going to cover that in 5 slides. Let's pause until we get there. So I think having that, like you said, not waiting for it to fly, but it's the anticipation, right, of thinking through what could happen.
Yes. And also, if you're making a presentation in a public setting that isn't like this, it's often helpful to have your summary after the Q&A. When I gave webinars in my office, I did that a lot. In fact, I still do that a lot, because the Q&A can peter off and you want to end strong. And especially if the last person who asks a question really wants to pontificate on something and doesn't actually have a question, which often can happen in audience situations. And so if you are not known to this group of people, you want to make sure that you end strong. And so I often put the Q&A as second to last and have a wrap up for a minute or less to reiterate what the key points were and end with some kind of strong momentum.
No,
And you
it's
can always invite people to come and meet you off to the side if they want to ask more in-depth questions later, because as Steve said, sometimes a really great conversation starts happening, and then you'd be missing out on all that juice if you just chopped it off.
right. No, it's great advice.
Yeah.
So if folks have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box. We don't have any as of yet, but we still have a number of people who are still on. One of the things that I was thinking about is, I found myself at times working on a presentation over several weeks, and in advance of a meeting, and you tend to keep thinking of new ideas and keep shaping it and refining it. And one of the traps I've gotten into is when you incrementally build something over time, you lose sight of the fact that it becomes really convoluted. Certain pieces could be convoluted because you incrementally add to it over the few weeks, yet everybody's got to see it all at once fresh. So it might be overwhelming to them. I don't know if that's ever happened to you, or if you have any advice in terms of how you're thinking and preparing and shaping a presentation.
It happens to me almost all the time. And one of the things that's challenging is that any of us who are explaining anything to anyone else knows more than the person we're explaining it to. And so we tend to want to cram as much knowledge into them as possible when people can only take so much at once, which is one of the reasons why we've broken this Lunch and Learn series down into small bites, because we recognize that some of the workshops we were giving were just doing brain dumps into other people's heads, and they weren't really helping them learn this one thing. And so Steve and I have had to become more disciplined in what we're teaching, so we're not throwing everything in at one time. So if we keep the focus on what is the minimum, what do I really need to teach most? What's the most important thing for people to learn today? It helps to pare out all that stuff. Because we start simple, we get bigger, it tends to mushroom, and then we have to rein it back in. In fact, I've had to rein my Wednesday's presentation back 3 times since I built it, because 1, it was too long, and 2, I realized I was explaining too much stuff. So it's definitely a hazard of teaching, demonstrating, presenting that we all share. And so it's something we have to battle with all the time. And then we find out when we do it live how people responded. And sometimes we ourselves go, oh my gosh, I just did verbal whatever, too many words.
Yeah.
Too many words, and I got to cut that down.
Yeah, no, I'm smiling because I'm thinking back to when we planned this 4-part series, how we said, wow, we got a lot of content here. So we got a question from Yolanda here. Are individuals using QR codes to transition customers' animated presentations? The reason I asked is because I need to educate potential customers on a health food product. Do you have any suggestions?
I think QR codes, I'm so glad you brought that up because I did not think to put any on my slides. I think it's fantastic. I've seen this at the movies. I've seen this at almost every presentation I've been to recently. Also, you can put it in your handouts. If you're giving people handouts, put a QR code. If you're giving them a business card, put a QR code, because nobody wants to type your website in. And if you want to direct them to a specific thing, like a giveaway, to sign up for your email list, whatever it is you want them to see that supplements what you just talked about, it's perfect, Yolanda. I'm so glad you brought it up. Definitely do it. The trick is it's got to be clear. Sometimes they're fuzzy and can't be read by your phone. And you have to leave it up there long enough for people to scan it, because they don't always realize what you're doing right away. It takes them a while to find the phone. I mean, the camera app, blah, blah, blah. And I've seen cases where it's here and gone so fast. I'm like, I didn't get there yet. And I'm trying to, and now the screen's gone by. So great idea. Thank you for sharing it. And I highly recommend it. It's a definite shortcut for people.
All right, great advice. Thank you, Alana, for that question. She said thank you, and she said she needs a mentor. You will include you on our email to tell you how you can make that happen. All right, I'm not seeing anything else in the Q&A box, and we're coming up on 1 o'clock. Do we want to wrap up here in a couple minutes, and we can stop the recording in a minute or two? What do you think, Kathleen?
Yeah. Yep. Thank you all for coming today. I hope that you learned at least one new thing and possibly a whole bunch of new things today. Don't forget that we're going to send you a link to this recording, as well as a link to the PowerPoint itself, so that you have access to it, so you can use it to play with and to learn from. This recording and others are hosted on our YouTube channel, which you can find when you go to YouTube at Greater Hartford SCORE. We have all kinds of helpful videos on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't subscribed, you might want to do that while you're there. You also can go to score.org and then find our page, and we have pre-recorded webinars there too. So whatever you like to do better, if you like score.org better, or if you like YouTube better, either one, you've got access to YouTube videos that can help you. And score.org also has templates like business plan, like Excel spreadsheets, and all kinds of other templates to help you get started if you're stuck trying to figure out how to do something for yourself. Because we're here to help you succeed, and that's what we love to do. So thank you for coming. Have a good rest of your day. And until we see you again, have a great afternoon.